Shalom Lachem. עכשיו, now, oh, I forgot. I got to turn off my Hebrew head, turn on my English head. Hello. Peace. How? So I'm continuing the video I made yesterday, but since it's one day went by, and I don't remember all the details of what I said yesterday, it might be a little disconnected. But basically, I'm on the same track, except I want to add in now the element of Passover. Since today is the day before Passover here in Jerusalem and where I live in Yishuv Adam here, I started thinking about Passover, and I said to myself, how can I tie this in with Passover so it'll be kind of like a Passover Torah lesson? So I think I have a way to do that. So I'll try it out and see how it works. So let's go back to the story of Passover and Moses. And they say that in the Kabbalah, one of the things they write is that everybody has a kind of a Moses inside of him, kind of a pure personality, able to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai, who actually is receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai every second of our lives, unless we block it out, unless we put a filter, unless we have confused ideas that get in the way, self-interruptions. That's the traditional Jewish way of looking at it. So let's take I'll start off with the two main ideas, mystical ideas that I find in the story about Moses, and that is the idea of the burning bush and this thing about a rod that becomes a snake. So first of all, one day Moses is going along, he sees a burning bush. What does that have to do with possibly with people, some guy sitting here doing Gestalt Therapy and doing some kind of theater exercise? What does that have to do with a burning bush? Well, we could start making all kinds of superficial ideas about it, but I want to go right to the philosophical base here. In a process of we call dialectical philosophy, going from thesis to antithesis to synthesis, or in the Gestalt therapy process, where a person gets to a point with awareness and then gets to two sides of his personality that are somehow opposites, and then gets stuck and feels at an impasse, and then the director and myself usually says something like, close your eyes, go inside. And that's called the rhythm of contact and withdrawal. First you contact the impasse in your life, and then you close your eyes, go inside, and you say, I tell the person, okay, now relax, see if you can find some image in the day, and some daydream in the void there. And a person after a while usually finds some image, and then working on the image with the associations and whatnot usually leads us to some kind of a new idea that somehow or other, even though it's usually very different than the first conflict, somehow when he starts working with that idea, it somehow provides a way to look at the previous conflict from a higher point of view. Hegel calls it sublation, we call it a leap of faith to the next level of the next world, whatever you want to call it. But somehow the person's on a higher level. And then that includes the two sides in a higher integration. So we have the dialectical idea of a thesis, where a person starts off. The antithesis, where you get stuck, the two sides, the x minus x. And then, so you start off with x, then you go to x minus x, and then you get to the new idea from the void, from the chalal panui, the empty space. And that's that's the synthesis. So you have thesis, antithesis, synthesis, one cycle of the dialectic, or the tree of life, if you want to think of it as going down to get to the impasse in Malchut in the bottom, and then going up, going down using deductive logic, breaking things down until you get everything split up, you don't know what you're doing anymore, and then going up using inductive intuition and awareness work and everything to get like putting Humpty Dumpty back together again until you get to the next beat, the next cycle. But you're starting on a higher level, and then you do the next cycle. So it ends up looking like a big spiral. You know, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, higher level, and then new thesis. So you get x minus x, y minus y, z, etc., etc. No end to it. Ein sof. All right, so that's, and then how does that tie in the idea of a burning bush? Well, every time a person gets to the impasse, closes his eyes, the two sides of the impasse get burnt up. They call that philosophically the negation of the negations. You start off with a one idea, the x, then you get stuck and at the opposites, x minus x, so that negates, that's a negation of the oneness. Start off with a thesis and negate it to get to the antithesis. So then you get a negation of negation, negation of the negation to get back to the oneness again, and you start all over again. So that's in that process, and if you want to look at it in terms of alchemy, the traditional symbols of the same thing, then you get the idea of the burning bush. Why? Because the four elements are water, earth, air, and fire. It looks different. I'm doing it my way. It looks backwards to you from the camera point of view. But anyway, I'm doing it my way so don't get mixed up. So the water is, you might say, the different elements, deductive thinking. I start off with this idea, let's say animals. I don't want to think of animals with wings and animals without wings. So that's that's water type thinking, splitting things up for some reason or other. Then you get to the maximum place where everything's split up and everything's in conflict. That's the idea of earth. One big, everything's stuck in a clog, everything's in conflict with everything else. Alchemical earth. And then you go inside to the void, an empty space that's like air, an empty space, air, avir in Hebrew. And then to that empty space, the air, comes a spark of a new idea from the heavens or whatever, from your unconscious if you don't like heavens. And that new idea, fire, somehow burns up the old crud, the old place where you stuck the two sides, and frees you as a new idea, and you start this whole cycle again. So there's a burning bush, right? You have matter, the water and the earth, and then comes along the fire and burns it all up. And a person, every time, if you do this therapy process, especially in Gestalt Therapy, you see it, then we have an endless cycle of coming up with new ideas or new things to work on, or new games, to new layers to peel of the onion. And every time with that next conflict gets burnt up, and so the bush is always being burnt up, and it's always growing again. So there's a burning bush. The tree of life is a burning bush. Okay? And when Moses sees that, well, you know, in the Bible they say see, but what we mean is somehow when Moses experiences that, like he is always doing Gestalt Therapy, so Moses somehow has this experience of being a burning bush, and it's almost as though he's doing Gestalt Therapy and God is his director or something like that. Then he's experiencing, he's living, he's embodying a burning bush. So in that sense, when my David Schwartz here, does a little exercise for 2 hours on awareness and gets to an impasse, oh, I'm trapped, I got to get out of here, but I can't because I can't find the key, and they're pulling me, and I feel guilty, and I resent that, and the two opposites, feeling somebody's accusing me, and then I'm defending myself, x minus x, there's these split, and then somehow he finds a new idea. What's the new idea he found in the therapy work? That by slowing down, and being in touch with one moment and the next moment and the next moment in my awareness work, I somehow discovered that I have more space in my life. There's space there for me to be creative. And if you listen to that tape, he says at the end of the session, the 2 hours, he says, well, I asked him, what did you learn? What's the message you got from 2 hours of Gestalt Therapy? And he says, I feel freer. I feel more creative. I have more space to come up with new ideas. And he said the association, it's the importance of getting to the place where you know nothing. Because when you know nothing, then you know everything in a mystical sense. So, and what does that mean, you know everything? It means you're in a position to be open to discovering new ideas, because you allow yourself to not know long enough to find some new idea. It's pretty obvious. Okay, so that's the burning bush idea. All right? Moses is burning bush. And David Schwartz is burning bush, and he's heading for Passover. Next idea. He comes across Pharaoh. Who's Pharaoh in our work? That's all the different conflicts in his life. Where we only did 2 hours of Gestalt work on awareness, so we don't have the rich material we would have if we worked on a dream, where we might have 10 different characters and all kinds of conflicts and everything and imagery. Here we have one little thing, but I want to show you that even with one little example, one little serious image of the being trapped there, kind of a Gnostic idea of being trapped in a cell here, and he hears a honking outside a horn, and he's imagining that somehow he's being called to some higher calling, but somehow he can't find the key to get out of here, and he feels that person's going to they're going to accuse him for being a drug addict. That's why he didn't go. He's feeling guilty about that, and we know in Gestalt therapy, guilt, we want to translate that into resentments. Who's he resenting? We haven't done enough therapy on David to know who in his family taught him to feel guilty about things like that. But maybe if he goes on, we'll discover things like that. Got lost. All right, so there's the burning bush. All right, now let's get to the next element, the rod. He gets to Mitzrayim, Egypt, and there's Pharaoh and the whole billion Egyptians. Now, of course, we're not talking about real Egyptians. We're talking, at least when I talk about this stuff, again, I'm not so into the literal translation. I'm looking at this as metaphors, although I certainly don't mind if anyone else out there looks at it as something that actually happened. Maybe there was maybe some of these things happened. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I just don't know. But anyway, once upon a time, we hear the story that all Pharaoh's magicians had rods, magic rods. And Moses had a rod, and so God says, hey Moses, come here. I want you to turn that rod into a snake to show the magicians there that you have powers that they don't have. Okay, so he does it, and right away everyone's very impressed. And again, the snake image, a beautiful example of the spiral again. I don't think it's just an accident that he turned it into a snake. He could have turned it into a frog or a grasshopper or anything else, but I think the snake idea is on purpose. Just like you see the snake in the Garden of Eden, the idea of this, again, this spiraling, this thing. All right, now, okay, so there's two examples of dialectical Kabbalistic thinking of a snake and a burning bush that are right there in the Exodus story. And David embodied those things in his Gestalt therapy work. He found images and had experiences of being a burning bush and of also going up a little bit on this the spiral of ascending ideas. Right, that's two elements. Now a little bit of background where that came from in Judaism, just in case you didn't listen to some of my other videos. Going back to Aristotle and Maimonides. Maimonides tells us that he's taking 26 propositions from Aristotle, and he's not embarrassed about that. Number 13 on the list, it's right there in the second section, the prologue to the second section of the Guide for the Perplexed of Maimonides. You look it up and you'll see number 13, and they distinguish between two kinds of motion. Linear motion, Aristotle distinguishes between linear motion and circular motion. And Aristotle says that if you're involved in linear motion, going from point A to point B to point C to D, and you spend your whole life doing that, then basically you're not going anywhere. You're just going in a rat race. What David and Schwartz calls on a roller coaster. Your life goes on and on and on. Racing to get to success, get to be a lawyer, or get to Mashiach, whatever it is. He sees it as a roller coaster, basically a straight line going from one point to the next. But Aristotle says, and Maimonides agrees, that this is not real motion. What real motion is staying in one place and going in a circle, which makes no sense, of course. But unless you think dialectically, and then of course we're back to the spiral again. Because the spiral is always the same circle, and it's always in the same place. The place is where you are. Your here and now existence, your situation. That place where you are, in the now, in the messianic now, is the place, hamakom. Hamakom, the place, is another name for God, by the way, and that's an implication of that the way to find God is to be really in your place, involved in your living your life totally in the situation you're in, and that's you get to hamakom, the place, and that's exactly what Aristotle is saying here. And when David started going on that spiral with the antithesis and the synthesis and all that, he right away was having that experience of, I got lost again. Let's see here. Oh yeah, okay. So, I wanted to go back to the source where it all came from. So I'm showing how it came out of Aristotle's idea of what is motion, real motion, and emotion, and as a matter of fact, what's real emotion, moving, somehow a person moves in his life, in this idea of a spiral. Okay, I got a list here, I'm looking at my list here. So I covered that, and next, let's talk about David. In his writings that we looked at the very beginning, he talked about, before he did the Gestalt Therapy work, he was describing his experience in a very linear way, and he was talking about as faith as some kind of to go aiming right at the Mashiach, what's out there in a straight line, and he had other things. Okay, so this is going to tie in with Nachman of Breslov, Likutei Moharan, number 3. And this essay, this section here, the main focus is going to be relating this to Nachman of Breslov's collected essays number 3, which is, I pointed out before, is about the different kinds of singers, the true singer and the false singer. And so now we're going to start bringing in how would Nachman of Breslov talk about the same things. And the way he does is he uses 2 kinds of kingdoms, Malchut de Kedusha and Malchut de Klipa. Klipa, again, is the word in Hebrew, means shells or skins. And so that's the layer of peeling the onion of games we play, our false, our evil side. And Malchut de Kedusha, kingdom of holiness, is the higher level that we want to get to somehow. And this is a dualistic idea, since Nachman of Breslov is in the Platonic tradition. So there's a correspondence between these 2 levels, and there's a big gap, and the way to get across the gap is with a leap of faith. Now, the leap of faith idea can be the way David talked about it at the beginning. He saw it as some kind of a decision I make. I make up my mind. I'm going to go, instead of being out there in the world, in the street, and doing this evil thing and that evil thing, whatever. Now I'm going to be good. So suddenly, mind makes a decision, and I change my geography. I come to Israel, and all of a sudden I'm good. Well, it's not an organic way of thinking. It's not, or being, just going from x to minus x, or minus x to x, jumping from opposites to opposites, and that's one of the main things that characterizes David's in his writings and before we did the Gestalt work. And in the Gestalt work, we began to see how he moved, began to use the other kind of thinking. Instead of just jumping from opposites, from one abstract idea to another abstract idea, he started thinking more organically. So, as a matter of fact, in his writings, he mentions the idea of Passover. He mentions an exodus. I'm going to do an exodus from the street to coming back to Israel and coming back to God and all this stuff, and faith, a leap of faith. But it sounds to me, and of course I'm basing it on what he wrote, and because I didn't meet him when he wrote it 5 years ago, but it sounds to me like we call abstract rather than concrete, living, organic reality that we get to in Gestalt therapy. Okay, let's see. All right. Now, in Nachman of Breslov's Likutei Moharan number 3, in other words, collected essays number 3, he brings in he uses an old story from the Talmud. I read that story a little bit, I think, before, but something about a frog. And let me see if I get it here. No, I didn't read that thing. Well, I got it here. There's a story here. Bar Chana recounted. I myself saw this akrupta, which is a frog, that was as Akra de Hagrunia, that was as large as the city of Hagrunia. And how large was the city of Hagrunia? 60 houses. A serpent came by and swallowed it. A pushkantsa came by and swallowed the serpent. It ascended and perched on a tree. Come see how great the strength of that tree is. All right, now there's one of those stories that he takes out of the Talmud and it gives us his own interpretation. So, or as translation, as we talked about that in the other essay. There, one of the key words is pushkantsa, and the translation here is ore. That pushkantsa apparently is from Aramaic, and the Hebrew version is orev, which in Hebrew means a crow, and has the consonants ayin, resh, bet, orev. And then Nachman likes to play with associations. He says, all my Torah is bechinot. Bechinot, in other words, associations, aspects. This is an aspect of that, from the root livchon, to examine something. And when I examine it, it makes me think of this, it makes me think of that, and that is what we call inductive logic, rather than deductive logic. Okay, so Orev leads him to think about Aravit, which is night, the prayer at night that people say. And he doesn't mention it, in his essay, but I'm sure it's there, somehow in his mind. I don't know why he didn't mention it. But the same three consonants you find in the word aravot. Aravot. And what is aravot? The saying, the usual phrase we hear is that God is riding on the aravot. God is somehow is riding this big chariot here, sitting there and looking down at the wilderness, the desert and the desert is the aravot. And God is riding on top of that in his Merkava, his chariot. All right. So we have three words. We have Orev, we have Aravit, and we have Aravot. All the same consonants and all saturating this little essay by Nachman of Breslov, and they all tie in with our work here. Going to the therapy work we did now. David started off, I believe, and I've been saying that he started off basically in this Malchut de Klipa, this kingdom of skins, klipot, shells, evil, Meshugana, lost. They would call it neurotic, but I'm not saying David is neurotic any more than anyone else is. And in fact, neurotic isn't even a word that's fashionable anymore. Mixed ideas. I'm sure if 999 out of 1,000 people out there did the same thing that David did, we would find how you also are less than 100%. As far as balancing your different awareness zones and all that. So I'm not accusing David of being any less perfect. But it just so happened that we noticed that he had certain material that came out of his work from certain habits that are his forms. We worked with those forms, and those habits became forms. For example, the main one was this one here, where he had his hands like this, and he was feeling, I'm restricted. And then we have a good example of what we call a self-interruption in Gestalt therapy. There's energy that wants to come out, but he's blocking the energy and creating an opposite force. The arms want to be freed, but the legs are holding him in, and it's a very typical example of a person that's what we call retroflecting. Energy is coming out rather than going in. I mean, going in rather than out. A person is imploding inside rather than exploding and using that energy as creative aggression to do things. And what we did was, by working a lot on that form during the session, we helped David to release that energy. And at the end of the session, you remember, he was saying, oh, I feel much more creative and all that stuff, and free. So anyway, what does this have to do with the bird, the crow, and the Aravit, and the Aravot? All right. Remember, we said that there are different levels of Okay, the two kingdoms. Kingdom of Holy Kingdom and Kingdom of Shells. 2 levels. Now this is a typical, what we call Platonic tradition thinking, what they call dualism. That there's a world of pure ideas in the heavens, in the mind of God, as Philo would call it, and there's a world of ideas that we live in our habits of our daily life, of habits, and not so creative thinking. And there's a gap there, and I mentioned this before, that the Platonic and assumption, or that Nachman and Breslov kind of thinking in that same tradition, is that we need faith, a leap of faith to get to that. Whereas Aristotle would say, well, we can do a lot of it by using our rationality to figure out how to make those transitions and all that. But both Aristotle and Plato have the idea that God is not in the big system, he's outside of it, riding the aeroboat. So we have the level of even if we have the level of the pure ideas here up there, and in the world, the kingdom of holiness, and the confused ideas down here in our world, what a person, the habits that we saw David was dealing with there. Now, and one of the main points that Nachman and Breslov is making at the end of that, in essay number 3 here, is that certain people have the ability, for example, King David, had the ability to be able to be on top of their material, on top of their materiality, their habits, and somehow or other, in that way, they're very close to being embodying the idea of a Messiah. So, in the theater exercise that we did at the end of the 4 hours after, this was the end of the 5 hours practically, we had David taking the different forms, habits that he had discovered, encountered, especially this form here, and improvising with those. And I was telling, one of the exercises we used to get to that was the idea of mocking the form, to criticize himself and saying, David, I see you doing that, you look like a this and you look like a that, and then distorting the form to get objectivity, to allow a performer, allow a person to see himself with a certain amount of objectivity. And this is the same idea of riding on the aeroboat. You look down at the wilderness of the barren existence that you're stuck in your life, your habits, and at the same time, if you're a Brechtian theater performer, you want the audience to look at this collection of garbage. They call it junk collage of forms that this character is somehow or other playing around with. And at the same time, to see that performer as free to play with those forms and to do things with them, to illuminate them here and now, using the ideas that he gets while he's doing that. And they call that tripping or cooking, or all kinds of words they use. Live form versus dead form. Okay? So there's the idea of the riding the aeroboat. That ties in with religion, the idea we don't know what God is, but what we can do is to try to, if we imitate what God does, then that's one way of getting closer to God. So here we're asking performers to basically do what God does, to ride the aeroboat, and by doing that, to show us how it's possible to free ourselves and to have divine inspiration and to be almost like prophets. So here basically we're running here a school for prophecy. If I advertise a school for prophecy, I'd probably get somebody complain and I'd be off of the internet in 1 week. Like I had to take Nathan's forms off of the internet because somebody complained. So I'm not going to officially call it a school for prophecy, but on the other hand, we certainly are embodying a lot of theories of prophecy here by asking people to in a sense, play God, do what God does, imitate God's actions, and thereby to get closer to God. And so this stuff is a form of prayer, just like Nachman of Breslov regards what he's doing as prayer. Okay. let's see now. There's so much here, it's hard to know what to say, deal with first. I think I'm going to jump now to an example to illustrate. Since this is deep stuff, I want to try to find a way to make it a little easier to understand. So I'm going to talk about, excuse me, a mockingbird. What does a mockingbird have to do? We already heard about two other kinds of birds. Well, we're going to say more about the other kinds of birds. But a mockingbird. And this is based on my own experience. I never read it, even though I have a degree in biology and chemistry. I never read about it in a book. But all I know is when I was living in Florida for about 10 years, a while ago, one day, and mockingbirds are all over the place in Florida. That's even the symbol of the state of Florida is a mockingbird. And one day here I am lying in my bed and listening to a mockingbird out the window, just like Bob Marley or David is listening to the birds out the window. Except the difference between me and them is that I was listening kind of objectively. I was not just getting into the idea of, oh, sweet songs of abstract idea. I was listening to hear what I heard. I used my ears, and I was amazed. Excuse me, got my glass of water here. This mockingbird. Well, I did this exercise a number of times. I listened to a few mockingbirds, or auditioned a few of them, and I always heard the same thing. So I'm going to illustrate it being, I'm sure people are thinking, a lot of people think this guy's for the birds when they're listening to me talk. But this time I'm actually going to be a bird, a mockingbird, and I'm going to illustrate how a mockingbird thinks. Okay, let's say I'm a mockingbird and I get a great idea. I'm going to sing my song. Let's see, I'll make up a song. I want to do. And I'm doing that because I heard some other bird do that the other day. But at the same time, now that I got tired of that, I'm going to look around for some other bird sounds that I can mock. But now, if I were what we call a deductive thinking mockingbird, like a scientist, I would think, well, let's see, I did 4 of those, and they were high sounds, and they were medium fast. So maybe I should do something like a different kind of thing I should do. Very different. That would be a good opposition, if I thought scientifically in a deductive sense. But that's not the way mockingbirds think. That's the way the people that study mockingbirds think, but they're not the way mockingbirds think. And you could tell by what the sounds they make. Here's what I heard. Here goes the mockingbird. He's looking for a new sound he can mock, and he doesn't know who's out there. He doesn't know which sounds he's going to need for his repertoire. But he's roping around like this. He's doing inductive logic. Watch this. And then he says to himself, hey, that's a nice sound. And what got him there? Maybe it was some memory trace or something, unconsciously. But how did he get there? Just like Nachman the Bresov, this bird's Torah is totally bechinot, aspects. One thing associates to the other. He starts off with a certain sound, and then he tries a variation on that, and a variation on that, and that makes him think of that, and that makes him think of that. And you could see the process of leaps inductively from one idea to another idea, and there's no clear logic here. They're not opposites, they're not parallels, they're not triangles, they're associations, one after the other. So you say to yourself, well, if the complete dialectical process of deduction and induction, that the snake is here, if that's the way dialectical thinking works, then, and if mockingbirds can do that, then are mockingbirds prophets? Can we start worshiping mockingbirds? And maybe there once upon a time some people did. People worshipped just about anything in the old days, one century after another. But I think I know why we educated Jewish people and today shouldn't be worshiping mockingbirds, because they don't have the writing Aravot idea. They have the complete dialectic, deduction, induction, deduction, induction. They have this, but they don't have the idea of God writing the Aravot, that somehow God is out there. He's the dialectic, but he's also outside of dialectic, supervising it. So again, this rhythm of contact with withdrawal and Gestalt therapy that David did, and that everyone else does that does Gestalt therapy does, you have the two sides. I'm trapped. I hear the noise. I want to go to that honking out there. I can't go because I can't find the key. It's like someone's accusing me, saying you're a drug addict, and I'm saying, no, I'm not a drug addict. You're a drug addict. Basically, it's creative aggression coming out there, which helps him to create a space or something. And in that empty space is the void. He gets a new idea. What's the new idea? The new idea is that when I have space, I can be freer. I can be more creative. That was the message. The message he got from the dream was God was saying to him, the Devar Hashem, the word of God was, David, slow down. Give yourself space. I hear that, I'm saying that myself, and I'm racing here to try to say it all, and I'm looking at the clock. I have another 25 minutes, so I guess I'm guilty of the same thing today. But anyway, that idea of slowing down was the message that David got. And that was his ability to take a leap of faith out of being stuck between trapped and not trapped, or guilty and not guilty, or accusing and being accused, or whatever, those opposites. And to be stuck there, and to take a leap out of that and just forget it all, just go into the void and allow himself to have a little empty space there, to take a leap of faith out of deduction into induction, or into the void, beyond induction even. And he allowed himself to be writing the Aravot, to be on top of it. And that's a way of, that's the correspondence, that's the leap that allows a person to jump from the spiral down here in the kingdom of evil, the kingdom of shells, and to jump up to the other spiral, the other kingdom of the same parallel ideas, corresponding ideas in the mind of God, whatever that is, where we don't know. And somehow in that void, or from that void, comes a new idea that allows a person to grow. Now, if we... okay, so in a sense, it just occurred to me, it's a direct parallel to what I'm a musician. Sometimes I play Dixieland jazz, sometimes I play klezmer, and a lot of time playing jazz, there's a lot that is basically the same process. Improvisation. Again, you know what the tune is, you know, but you're free of that tune. You're free to trip on it, you know. Okay, that was tripping. Again, writing Aravot. So that's what Bob Marley does, and that's what David learned to do. All right, to trip, to write the Aravot. All right, now let's look at. So there are three levels here. Just to make the review, to make it clear, there's three levels of being stuck. There's the most stuck, or being unstuck. The most stuck is where David started off with at the beginning. Stuck between opposites, deduction, purely deduction. Either this or that. I cut myself, either I'm one with everybody, or I isolate myself from everybody and I'm alone, and I'm purifying myself by purifying the people I'm with, you know, being only with good people or something, or with no people. Let's see, where is that list of... Here we're getting to David's work, so I want to get to that. Okay, here are some of the... So David was into that deduction thing of opposites, extremes. In his voice, sometimes, if you listen, you'll hear he goes from quietly talking, suddenly he shouts! Out of nowhere he shouts. Again, sign of this missing center. Jumping from one thing to the other. Seeing that, seeing that, hearing that, dump up, inside, outside, jumping. Again, no center. all of a sudden getting involved in some little intricate system of riddle, or he tells himself about something or other, and just blanking out everything, and then back in and out. Again, this is it's almost autistic stuff. But again, no more than most other people would do the same thing. Attitude towards God: one love, one heart. Everybody should be one. God, he said, Allah or God, it's all one. Oneness. But then 2 minutes later, he's saying, oh, these terrible Bedouin, and they stole all the sheep, and this and that, and the Jews are good. And that. Again, split. You don't see the process of including the opposites in a higher integration. Philosophically, what's missing here, we have identity, the oneness of God and everything, or we have difference, everything's split up. But the idea of identity and difference, the synthesis, which is organic and grows out of a living life, we don't have. We didn't have. We start seeing it again in the Gestalt work. Okay, so that was deduction. The second kind of thinking is, and this is also in the Nachman essay, where we combine deduction and induction. And that's what mockingbirds can do. A mockingbird can decide, I'm going to eat that, I'm not going to eat that. That's deductive thinking. And he can decide to do his vocal improv and find all kinds of sounds, but he's still not a prophet. He's a mockingbird. And people that do things like that are also mockingbirds. For example, an artist that paints with one color he paints, and the next thing you know, oh, that's me thinking of yellow. No, that makes me think of blue. So he sees a little yellow dot here, a blue dot there, and then he puts it all together. What a beautiful picture. Okay, that's inductive thinking. And the same artist, of course, can decide, I'm going to eat salami, and I'm not going to eat pork chops, Right, so he can do deductive thinking, he can do inductive thinking. But is he a prophet? Not yet. There's still something missing. Somehow to get to the writing on the Aravot. All right? So there's 3 levels here. We have being stuck in deduction. We have a person that can do the whole cycle of deduction, induction. And then finally we have the level of a person that can do those two, plus also ride the Aravot. In that case, a person is approaching the idea of what a prophet or Mashiach is supposed to be doing, imitating the actions of God. And that's what we find in this essay by Nachman Breslau. I'll tell you exactly where we find it. Section 6 of the essay number 3 here. In the future, this is number 5 in the middle, but in the future when Malchut of Holiness ascends, that is to say when a person is doing his induction well, and God will be king over the entire earth, then song will be uplifted and perfected in the aspect of the intellect of Malchut of Holiness, from which song is drawn. So in other words, once a person is able to do this integration of deduction and induction, but do it in the here and now as part of a process like Gestalt Therapy, and then when you go inside and do the rhythm of contact and withdrawal, then you're approaching the idea of the Messianic now. And the ideas you get then, the new integrative ideas, allow you to ride the Aravot, to look at the different things the different experiences you've had in your Gestalt work up to that point, and somehow to try to jump, make a leap of faith to the higher level. Again, I read it, but in the future, when Malchut of Holiness ascends, and the parallel there is a person going along and doing 2 hours of Gestalt Therapy, say, and God will be king over the entire earth. That's when he goes inside and finds the new idea. Then song will be uplifted. In other words, what comes out of that person's mouth, his monologue in the Gestalt Therapy session, will be perfected in the house, and he'll be talking holy stuff. He'll be giving us Devar Hashem. He'll be giving us the word. And David got the word. Remember, he got the word. Slow down, buddy. You're on a crash course, on a roller coaster, you're going to crack up. So he's trying to do that. David is smart. He knows he's willing to listen, and so he got off the drugs. He got off the rat race, and he's trying to find a way. I hope he finds a way. There's another metaphor that Nachman Breslau, he's endless number of metaphors he finds in the Torah. Number 6, This is the meaning of your loving kindness is higher than the heavens. And he says, heavens corresponds to the voice. As is written, you cause your voice to be heard from heaven. For by means of loving kindness, the thread of loving kindness drawn from over one who studies Torah at night, the voice is rectified. This is, for your loving kindness is higher than the heavens. Right, now, loving kindness, in this case, and these words keep used in all kinds of situations by all kinds of people to have all kinds of, to represent all kinds of things. But in this case, the loving kindness he's talking about is this idea of writing their avot, that somehow God, with his loving kindness, is able to redeem everything and everybody, and that requires absolute faith, and that's the basic credo of Likutei Moharan, of Nachman Breslev, since he embodies this traditional Platonic mysticism, or whatever you want to call it. Let's go back and let's read that again. This is the meaning of your loving kindness is higher. So this, in other words, the world of God, pure ideas in God's mind, that spiral that's in God's mind, the way he thinks, is higher than the heavens. What's the heavens? In this case, the heavens represents the spiral that's in the lower kingdom. It's the heavens. It's a big system, a zodiac of all kinds of characters relating to each other. You know, the Aries people or the other, but they're all types. And they're all locked into this rigid framework of a system, the way people we think, and it's our habits. So in psychology, those are the games and habits we play. We have all of that stuff is the heavens in this case. Even a person like a mockingbird is, in this case, qualifies to be in the heavens because he can do deduction and induction, just like an artist or a lot of religious people can do both of those. But they don't have these. None of these. Has that other element. The heavens corresponds to the voice, and that's if you think of the voice of Gestalt Therapy, the monologue, that a person talks, I'm aware of this and I'm aware of that, and then he thinks about my mother and my father, and they have a conflict with the two sides and the two chairs back and forth. That whole thing that goes on for 3 hours working on a dream, that's all a voice. And somehow Nachman Breslev is making a distinction between speech and voice. When he says speech, he's talking about Devar Hashem, the word of God that somehow comes through as the final existential message of the dream. Whereas the voice, in this case, call, the word call that he uses in Hebrew, is actually, think of it as the voice that a person is using when he does Gestalt Therapy. I'm aware of this, and telling my father this, and telling my mother that, and she says that, and identifying with all these different characters. So a person that does all that, uses his voice in that very healthy way, doing Gestalt Therapy, he's working deductively and deductively. But if he doesn't do the rhythm of contact withdrawal enough times to get some kind of an overall message that what's it all for somehow or other, how to come together, then he's missing the writing the Aravot. So the Gestalt process is a lovely example, concrete here and now, that David did, as a matter of fact, to embody that process. Now, I see I've got 15 minutes, almost 15 minutes up. I don't know if I'm going to make it or not, but I'll see if I can. Let's see. All right, jumping to what David did at the end of the session there, when he was playing with his forms and as a performer, they say a performer on top of material, getting creative ideas, working with his habits. Again, that's the idea of writing Eravah, a performer on top of his material. And you look the forms, they got stretched out of shape. You know, it wasn't just this form, it was variations on that. So that's called in the theater going beyond the image, tripping, all that stuff. So we have the three levels of thinking that are involved here. That allows a performer or a religious person or whatever to approach the idea of imitating the action of God. All right? Logically speaking, all the elements are there in that process. If you don't think in Brechtian theater terms, where this comes from, you want to think in Stanislavski, the naturalism, you talk about the superobjective, or Aristotle instead of Plato, you talk about the final cause. the magnet that's pulling the whole thing forward. Again, that final thing pulling it all forward is the writing out of Rabota idea, that somehow an actor needs to be aware of in a loose way while he does the different x and minus x, all these things that he does in the scenes. But you find the same idea in Aristotle and Plato, except it's more obvious in Plato since you emphasize the separation more. That's one thing I want to say. Another thing, I want to go to the essay here. Oh, here, it's over here. There are a few terms. You might say, oh, you're just making this up. This is not in an essay by Nachman of Breslov, and I want to show you where I find some of these things here. Here, from the Hebrew. The first, let's see, should I read the Hebrew here? He says, behold, when someone listens to the singing of a singer who is wicked, it is detrimental to his serving the Creator. But when he listens to a singer who is virtuous and worthy, it helps him to, as will be explained. Okay, now the translation here that the Breslov Research Institute is using here of singer to singer, of the word nigina, I don't think is accurate. All right? It's such a central word in this essay that I really need to try to correct them. Here's the Hebrew. Hine misha shomea nigina mitnagen rasha. He who hears nigina, which is singing, playing. Nagin is to play an instrument. Nagina, playing, mitnagen, playing itself or something or other, evil, kashelo, is hard for him. And then he goes on. The reason for this is that the voice of the song is drawn from the birds. Ki hinei kol hanigina nimshechet min hatziparim. That's the key thing I want to focus on. Just that one little sentence. The reason for this is that the voice of the song is drawn from the birds. Ki hinei kol hanigina nimshechet min hatziparim. Right there you have the deeper idea. Nigina and tziparim. The word tzipor is very important here. It means bird, but it also has the implication of capriciousness. Like we think of a bird twittering around. And in Hebrew, you got to realize that Nachman of Breslov probably had a big fat dictionary near him, and he knew all the different possible innuendos of every, nuances of every word. So he must have known that the word tzipor, tzifarim, the chirpings of a bird, or the word bird, implies somehow capricious, in other words, playing, like a child plays. And that's exactly the idea of tripping here, that a performer is going to be like doing tziparim, making chirps, twittering. All right? If I had it set up, I would play Messiaen's orchestral piece about birds. You hear the twittering very nicely there. And the nigina is the idea of, he's taking the idea of playing an instrument and spreading it out to be a very broad idea of playing. That a person is playing creatively with his life, that somehow gives him objectivity, and there's the performer on top of his material, and there's the writing the Arabot, and the whole thing is right there in the word nigina. And the tziparim is the playfulness. So the idea of playfulness is right there. All right, that's one element here. And then he talks about the two birds. Now we want to. I've already given a pretty good general background here, so I'm not going to just go. I want to try to finish this thing in another 5 to 10 minutes. So if I just quickly take this key idea from the birds here, I think it'll make it even more clear. In the theory of perception that Gestalt Therapy took from Aristotle, we have this idea of what is, when I see something, what is it? It's as though, and we have a similar thing in Moses, the idea of horns coming out of his head. a person is when a person is being really prophetic, when he's doing, in other words, when he's doing here and now work with Gestalt Therapy, something like that, it's as though rays come out of your head and you contact something. Let's say I contact my thumb, all right? So it's as though a ray comes out of my head, or a bird flies out of my head. At the same time I see, what do I see? I see a bunch of tiny striations there. I see a arc shape. I see it almost looks like a bald head with a big smile, a frown on it. And then, you know what I mean? The tip of the nail and the tip of the thumb. Or I could imagine I'm looking out a window there or something, where the nail is. Or I can focus on the colors, pink and whitish and yellowish, all of that. It's as though a whole zillion birds are flying from that thumb towards me. And there's some place where my horns radiating that idea somehow, this is the idea of chokhmah and bina, that I'm radiating some idea there, and I'm coming in contact with a whole bunch of other things, and there's a place where the other side is the bina, the environment projecting back on me, what I'm projecting there. I'm projecting, it's all me as the center of my world here, projecting, and then kind of autistically being in touch with my projection, and then this place where they meet, where the chokhmah, the idea, and the bina, the differentiation there meet, is the place where I get perception. The gestalt, the pattern, comes together. The figure emerges from the ground. That's the idea. So these are the two birds. Those birds are the deeper birds that Nachman is talking about. And when a person is doing the Gestalt awareness exercise and doing all the dream work and getting in the images and everything, especially when you go inside and allow your imagination to project totally and freely, and your mind is the pure rays coming out to the pure image, the thing you get to a very pure level of these two birds in the kingdom of holiness. Whereas in the Gestalt therapy work, in our work with David, we saw how we started off with a simple idea of birds twittering out there like Uncle Remus, the blue bird on my shoulder. A very abstract idea of what a bird is. But when we get to Nachman Abresa, we see a much deeper idea of what is a bird, and we see how it, getting in touch through the Gestalt therapy process, we saw David do it, allows him to get a new idea from those higher birds. And this is the idea here. The reason for this is that the voice of song is drawn from the birds, and there's two kinds of birds, Nachman tells us. As we find in the Midrash, why is the purification of a leper dependent upon two live, pure birds? Those are the higher ones. Those are the Gestalt therapy birds. Let the chatterer come and atone for the chatterer. For the leper was stricken on account of his voice, which spoke Lashon Hara, slander. So David's voice was contaminated. When we first met David in his writings, it was a contaminated voice because he was talking about things like God and his spiritual search was set up in terms of opposites and not in terms of integrative processes that could have been happening. When a singer is wicked, he takes a song from other birds. Those are the klipa. So there's two kinds of two levels of birds. We have the birds that a person is on drugs maybe is projecting some kind of a distorted idea about birds. Everything relates to his craving out there. You know, you meet a person, how can I get the drugs from him? Meet a person, how can I get the money from this? You know, whatever. So that distorted idea of perception and thinking and habits is the lower level of the lower spiral. So you see, it's right here. The whole thing's right here. And King David is the one who's able not only to liberate his own birds, but also to, he said at the very end of the thing, David, not only that, but King David is a person who's able to, let's see, running out of time. King David was able to correct this song as well. In other words, a song of some evil person. As a result, the kingdom of holiness ascended. And it was through this that David was merited to be the king. He merited to be the Messiah because he was able not just to redeem his own habits, but also to serve as an example to other people and redeem them. And that's exactly what the function we're giving David here, our little David Schwartz, that he also serves as an example to you out there, if you want to take him seriously and take me seriously, as the same invitation to deal with your own ornithology, your own birds. Try to get to the good ones, the higher level ones, all right? And don't get stuck with the other ones. I wonder how much time I got. I don't think I got much time. So I didn't cover everything, but I covered a lot just now. Oh yeah, the last thing is, when a person gets to that level, Nachman says, he is like a person who is Zamru, he used the phrase in Hebrew, Zamru Maskil. When he's like that, he's like, sing, O wise man. And that's exactly what the goal here in this process, where the performer on top of his material is like a wise man getting ideas from the heavens or from his unconscious or whatever, and being able to sing in this nagina, this playful way, to be on top of his material and to play with his material as a performer, and to teach the audience, just like Brecht wanted to teach the audience, that they should be also free from fascism, from communism, from anything else, any other ism, and to serve the higher truths, the higher ideas, that we as being more than robots and even more than mockingbirds, we have this ability to be almost like messiahs if we would take our inner Moses and get our own Exodus. So there's the Passover thing. Go get yourself free from Pharaoh, but the key is not matzah. The key is taking your work seriously and doing something like Gestalt Therapy, or something which allows you to get to the higher birds. Instead of acting like a bird brain, act like a holy Aristotelian or Maimonides or Nachman of Breslov type birds, and be fly